Hi, I'm Zoe Creighton and I'm lead coach for Thrive, and I'm here today with Marina Webster to discuss virtual teams and share some tips with you over the next 20 minutes or so. Now, Marina is one of Thrive's most experienced and in fact most popular coaches, and her specialism is in culture and behaviour change. And she's worked with global oil companies, banks, pharmaceutical companies, and indeed governments and the National Health Service. And within that work, she's frequently helped companies set up and manage virtual teams effectively. So let me hand over to Marina.
Thank you, Zoe. That was a lovely introduction. So yes, you've summed it up really well. I tend to work with boards and senior teams, but across the organisation around culture and behaviour change. So obviously, I need to mention it. The world we're living at the moment is huge change for everybody, and I know for some people you may have already sort of bedded in with your team working from home, and others that haven't. But I do want to say that as a result of what we're going through, my goal for you as individuals is not only to have a great team, but really to grow and thrive as an individual and come out of this stronger, wiser, more flexible, more creative. So when we're going through the slides today, this is really about helping you as an individual and also helping the team. So what we're going to do is pop onto the first slide. Now, this is just like an agenda. We're going to take a deeper dive into some of these subjects. So I'm not going to go through them all now. I'm just going to highlight the ones where we're not going to be doing a lot of it on the next slide. So the trust one is absolutely key. If with your team members there's high trust, then things should work smoothly if we get the ground rules right in the sense of working as an effective team online virtually. If the trust is a bit sort of iffy, then you may need to work on that. And if the trust isn't necessarily there because they're new or the trust has been broken, then I would strongly recommend you go down to the, I think it's the point there that talks about crucial conversations. What we'd like to do is nip things in the bud early so that for both parties, so that things can work really well. And if you want to find out more about those two things, then obviously we can book a call on the Thrive platform. But yeah, in terms of a highly effective virtual team, these are the things we're going to go into. So Zoe, if we could have the next slide. Thank you. So this is all about change management. It is about people, process and IT. I really specialise in the people side of things. I am learning lots about Zoom, etc. Since we've been in this pandemic. But Zoe, would you like to talk a little bit more about IT and processes?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of systems out there like Zoom, like Sneak, Slack, all kinds of things that you can use to quickly and easily check in with your team. And I think it is important to agree how you're going to use the different channels of communication so that people don't get irritated by maybe constantly having WhatsApp messages or whatever. But on the other hand, feel that they can quickly ask a question of someone in the way they perhaps would have done just across the desk previously, because that's where a lot of the richness of conversations and collaboration comes from, those quick little questions which can help move things forward. So do discuss how you're going to use IT as a team.
And anything you'd like to add, Zoe, about process?
Yeah, I think when we're all working from home and we're not used to working from home as much, it can be quite important to allow people a little bit more flexibility in how they handle situations and how they deliver on the tasks that they're working on. So if you're the manager of the team, I think make sure you keep your focus on the outcomes that you're looking for from people. Don't worry too much about the process they're going through.
Brilliant, thanks Zoe. So I'm now moving on to the next slide, and this is really about agreeing the parameters with individuals, and ideally, you would have done this at the start, but as I say, we're into it already, so you can always go back and have a check-in, because it's really important that your team members and people are their authentic self. So I think the questions that I would be asking to get a feel for it is, how do they feel about working from home? What are their likes and dislikes? What are they really good at about working from home? What don't they like? And then how they can manage themselves well so they can work effectively at home. Again, this is a challenge for a lot of us. And I think there is a danger of, people go, oh, well, I'll just wear my sloppies, or I'll keep my PJs on, nobody's going to see me, it doesn't matter, I'll be working away. But there is something about self-discipline and getting into the mindset of work. So obviously, if you've got a family at home, young children, it's really important that you have the conversation about when they can be most productive, that the individual team members negotiate with their family. So they say, these are the times I'm going to be working, I need do not disturb, if I've got this meeting to go to, ideally, that sort of thing. So there's a few things there. So it's asking them how they can be productive, and to really structure it. Otherwise, we can all fall into this where we're putting the washing on the line. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but what I call faffing around a bit, as opposed to doing what I call real work. So it's important that they do that, and that you have that conversation about it with them. And also to ask the question, if you're the manager or the boss, what else can I do to support you at being your best when we're working from home? And people have got different styles and different ways of doing things. So it's not that they need to be like you, but there may be some things that you can do to help support them. And I think it's a really good question to ask. Agree clear expectations and goals for the week. So I think that's really important. Zoe's already touched on it about output. So it's not necessarily about the process and when they're going to work and how they're going to work, but it's really important that this is what we want to achieve, that you ask them that this is what we want to achieve this week, and agree a time when you're going to review this. Check that they have the right resources available, and really sort of frame this time as a learning opportunity. There's a client that I'm working with where it's gone really quiet at work. They don't know at the end of all this if they're even going to have a job, but they're framing it, the mindset is, I can really learn and develop as an individual and as a team. So they're booking on there's so many things online that people can do if they've got a quieter time. So we can still make this really work for the individual. So when you're thinking about your own team, these were the questions that you would ask. If you're a team member listening to this and not a manager, I think it's fine for you to have this conversation with your manager if they're not really reading the signs, in the way you want to, that you haven't had the real conversation. And again, we can help you do that so it works really well. So let's move on. So is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Thanks, Rena. I was maybe just going to come back to that point at the top about acknowledging stress and affirming confidence in individuals in the team. Because obviously this is a very stressful time for a lot of people. I mean, they might be worried about people in the family getting coronavirus, as well as actually delivering the work when they've got children and family around them that they don't normally have to cope with. So if you're the manager and people do express the fact that they're feeling stressed and overwhelmed and under pressure, acknowledge it, accept it, don't brush it away, or don't try and reassure them artificially. If you're stressed yourself, it's perfectly fine to share that information with them. But at the same time, what you want to do as the manager in particular is affirm that you have confidence in the team, and you have confidence that people will come through this and they will deliver on whatever the agreed goals are, and that they will together as a team, you will push through.
That's absolutely right, Zoe. And the other thing I meant to mention is to don't focus on things that you're really concerned about, focus on things you can influence. And part of work actually takes them, some people I've been coaching, they've been watching the news too much in a way. The work actually gets you back into the old way of working, if you like. It's focusing your attention. So acknowledging, being understood, absolutely right. And also then get focus on some other things. So yeah, if we could have the next slide, brilliant. So this is where we're talking about the principles of how we work together as a team. Now, sometimes when I'm working with teams, we normally align this with the purpose, so we know why we're here. So even if there could be redundancies and things coming up, things are up in the air, we can still very much focus on today, this week. The principles of how we work together as a team is absolutely key. So again, I would have this as a team discussion. You know, now we're a virtual team. Examples would be things like, these are examples of what your principles are. They don't have to be these ones, you could have different ones. But obviously a key one is about communication, frequency, formal, informal channels. I know that a team that I'm working with, they do have a quick check-in call every day at 8:30, just for 10 minutes. There's 5 of them where they talk about how they're feeling now, what's going on for them, and what they're looking to achieve that day. And that kind of sets the team up, the individuals and the team up for the day. But that's not a must-have. That's something this team have decided to do. Zoe, was there anything you'd like to say about communication?
I think as long as people have discussed what works best for them, you know, it's up to individual teams, isn't it? As you say, it's not right for every team to have the check-in at 8:30 in the morning, but to ensure there is at least some point on a regular basis that people know is part of the routine, where they can do a little bit of downloading or a bit of chat. Because remember, normally when you're all gathering for a meeting, or when you all get together first thing in the morning and sit down at your desk the first time, that informal chat would happen. And that is part of building trust and camaraderie in a team. So don't think that that's not important just because we're doing all the communication virtually now.
Brilliant. And it's about getting the balance right on that, isn't there? There's the check-in and the chat, and then getting on to the work. So the next point in there is about team goals, weekly, monthly. So again, at the bigger team meetings, a lot of people have the more project-led team meetings, or more involved team meetings every other week, weekly or monthly. And again, that would be something that you would agree with the team, but we'd be very clear on where individually we're going and where as a team we're going. The third point on there about being proactive, this is about stay proactive as opposed to reactive. So that's again trying to make sure as team members that we're setting things up well as possible at home, and being proactive on that and planning things in. As a team, we'd be talking about who's doing what, when, is obviously important. And then we've talked briefly about the meetings, the frequency and the technology. Again, so I just want to check that, have I missed anything you want to add to that bit?
I think maybe just emphasize this point about who's doing what and when, because when you're not kind of observing someone over the other side of the office, you don't have so much sense of what they're doing and what they're focused on. And so to have more explicit conversations around that when you're working virtually, I think is really helpful.
Brilliant. And then again, it's mentioning there about who's leading which projects. There may be things as a team that you'll want to discuss, of things that you could be doing differently. This is all around the creativity or some new things. And I've already touched on development time. This is a huge opportunity for people to use this time to develop as an individual. There's tons of stuff online. There's you know, the coaching that we do, there's all sorts of things. So if you're having a bit of a quieter time, this is a great opportunity. And then having a discussion as a team about how we can keep each other motivated and on track. If it was me leading that team, I would put it out to the team and ask them. And again, I'm going to ask Zoe, is there any ideas that you've seen or that you do?
Yeah, some teams like to have a shared dashboard so that people can kind of add information on where they've got to on particular tasks on a regular basis. But if you're the leader of a team, be careful that doesn't turn into micromanagement. But it can be useful for the team to get a whole picture, an overview with a dashboard of some sort. And on the motivation front, as I said earlier, it is important to have a little bit of fun with the team. And there are all kinds of things that people can do to have fun in a virtual way. So, I mean, it could be anything from a quick show and tell at the beginning of the meeting, you know, get people to pick something from the room they're in that they can talk about or that's interesting in their room, and just do that for a few minutes at the beginning or end of the meeting. Or do a pub quiz or 20 questions, or just have a pizza night or something like that, or virtual happy hour where you all agree that the main focus of the conversation is chat and light-hearted conversation. Is not work. It's just like you would chat down the pub normally.
Brilliant. I know one team, they used to have a sing-along. They'd made up a rap song about their mission statement. So we can get really creative on this. But again, ask the team. And yeah, there's some great ideas, Zoe, and lots online, isn't there? All right, so I'm now just going to talk briefly about having highly effective team meetings online. So again, this is an area I specialise in, particularly chairing meetings and making sure that all the team are on board. So this is a sort of top tips, really. The first thing is to have an agenda and to circulate the agenda at least 3 or 4 days before the actual meeting with any pre-reading, because what we want is when people come in on the meeting, it's efficient, effective, and we're on track. So that's the purpose of that. I often say to people, say to individuals, if there's any real detailed questions, rather than take up the time for the whole team, and say this to the team, that they can contact each other or contact you to ask the detailed questions prior to the meeting. Be really clear on who is chairing the meeting. And I think, again, as a development area, if you're the manager, you could start chairing the meetings, but I think this would be really good if other team members had a go at chairing the meeting. It's really important at meetings to have ground rules so the meeting runs smoothly. Something that Zoe and I talked about is putting your hand up when you want to speak. What you don't want is people talking over each other. Keeping on mute to avoid background noise. A dog that I used to own used to bark when I was on the phone. He was sort of jealous. I think now you can get the kids coming in, the in-laws or whoever it is coming in. So again, I think it's really good to have it on mute and set it up with the family that you're going to be actually in a meeting. And use of the chat function, that can be good about the topic. I'd keep it on the topic if you're going to use the chat function. Zoe, would you like to add to that?
I think we've probably covered the main things. Just the last point there, again, it's about checking in time. Do allow in pretty much all meetings at least a few minutes for people to see how everyone is and download any, any urgent things they want to share with the group, because that's part of being a team, listening to each other and understanding what's going on for each other.
Yeah, fantastic. Right, so just adapting to the situation. I may have mentioned this, but I'm going to mention it again, that some of us are lucky that we've got an office. Some people don't have an office, so they've got their laptop at the dining table or in their bedroom or wherever it is. What I strongly suggest is, to get into the right mindset, to have a certain work area where you work, and then when you finish work, just put that all away and then get back into, this is my living room or my bedroom. So I just think that can be useful. So when we talk about adapting to the current situation we're in, as a manager, that there are things, and also as participants, about this whole letting go. We're not in that world we were in, and whilst we miss that, there's lots of great things about the world we're in now, like no commuting, no work, not getting into traffic and all sorts of things. So the letting go is partly for participants about that, but as a manager, quite often we're used to having our people, we can see them, we know what time they come in, we know what time they finish, we know when they're going for lunch, etc. So this is a big challenge for some people about, oh my goodness, I'm not really in control of that anymore. And there's a danger of people micromanaging. So we want to avoid that. But I do understand, there's a great book called Situational Leadership by Blanchard, and he talks about adapting your leadership style to the situation. And I'm just going to touch on two of those. If you've got a brand new person who doesn't really know the ins and outs of how it all works, they may have their job role and responsibilities, but a story I can give is somebody that I was coaching that had someone that was brand new and was a graduate, and they were doing kind of really inappropriate things like chatting for 40 minutes over coffee with someone on the phone as opposed to getting onto their work, doing lots of things that weren't helping the team or achieving the goals. So if it's a brand new person or someone who's lost motivation, if we were using the situational leadership model, we'd be talking about telling them, that's just an easy way to remember it, to be really clear about the expectations and when we're going to review them, and to check if there's anything that they need, resources that might need mentoring, they might need some more training, they might need help, but check in that the goals you're setting and the times are realistic with them. And that keeps them on track, actually, so that helps them to stay focused. The other end of the spectrum is people that deliver, the people that are fantastic at delivering. I often coach people where they're not getting any recognition, they're not getting any feedback, so their motivation can drop. So if you've got someone who's brilliant that you just delegate to, make sure that we are doing the team meetings and the individual chats to see how they're doing and how they're feeling and what they would like. So I just want to touch on those two for now, but if you want to know more about that, you can come back to us. I've mentioned making sure the goals and times are realistic, so get quite specific with that. Be clear about the expectations, and again, I've mentioned there's two key things that people can really learn from this, or three really. One is the art of self-discipline, being put in an environment where it's not necessarily going to be easy, and second is using your time effectively, and third, which is what we're talking about here, is really keeping the team, keeping each other on track and up and buoyant. So I think that's really useful. And then just being really flexible. Again, Zoe and I have talked about this. We're really interested in the output, not necessarily the process. You know, if they decide to stay up till 10 o'clock at night and started work at, I don't know, 7 that night and just did a bit in the morning, that's up to them. As long as they achieve the goals, that's really what we want to focus on. Zoe, is there anything you wanted to mention on this slide?
I think you've covered it all, Marina. That's great.
Fantastic. The last two things on there, there's the guys doing the, sorry, can we go back one just on the visuals? There's the guys doing that. What we're trying not to do is to get into a power struggle. That doesn't work. Just go into having the crucial conversations and in a constructive way. As I say, there's definitely ways of doing that. And then that last slide is just like, yes, let's ride the wave of this and come out the other side stronger, wiser, and more effective as a virtual team and as an individual. So the last slide is just really a summary of what we started with. Is there anything else, Zoe, that you wanted to add or we've missed?
I think we've covered most of it. I suppose maybe there's one other thing to say on trust, which is in these times, it often, when we're working virtually and we're not used to it, things take a little bit longer than we expect, especially with the other stresses and strains we've often got going on at home around us. So be really careful that you don't overpromise and underdeliver, because building trust is all about people feeling they can rely on you. And obviously, if you do kind of say, okay, I can achieve X, Y, and Z on such and such a timeline, and then only achieve X, people start to feel that trust eroded. So just be careful about that, both as a manager, be careful about what you're demanding of your people, or people who are promising to deliver things. Just don't overstretch yourself. Concentrate on building the trust.
I totally agree with you, Zoe. And I think, you know, quite often people say, yeah, I can easily achieve that. If things start to slip, then let them know in advance, rather than the disappointment of, oh, I trusted them with that, they haven't done it. So I think keeping the good communication and keeping people aware is really important. But yes, so the goal is to really get the best out of ourselves, to keep the team spirit up and really maximise our potential together. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think that brings us to the end of the tips we were going to cover here and now. But of course, you can at any time book coaching with MyThrive at thrivepartners.co.uk. There are coaches generally available up to 24 hours a day, and we cover all kinds of topics. I mean, obviously, you can have a deep dive on anything we've discussed here, so things like building trust, or if you feel you're being micromanaged or you're worried you're micromanaging others, you know, we can coach you about how to make that work more effectively for the team. We can cover things like having difficult conversations if you do need to give any difficult feedback, say, to any of the team members, or if there are team members who are feeling particularly stressed or anxious at the moment. And we cover loads of other things too, everything from leadership to building confidence to having interviews, all kinds of topics. So do take a look at the expertise areas listed under Thrive Partners and use this time, like Marina said earlier, as a chance to develop yourself. But for now, I wish you all the best of luck in coping with the remainder of the time we have in lockdown. Anything else from you, Marina?
No, thank you, and hope to hear some from some of you. And yeah, let's make the most of it, as you say.
Okay, thanks. Goodbye.
Thanks. Bye.